What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into, as we had a quiet week in the NCAA men's volleyball world. We only had one big upset. It wasn't the biggest upset, but how about Damon, the Wildcats, taking down Princeton? Are those Wildcats for real? Or was it just Princeton being a little rusty? Also, the First Point Collegiate Challenge is this weekend. Who will be participating in it, and what can we expect from that challenge? Also, we have a little bit of a breaking news on one of our former guests, and we have ourselves quite the Friday night as I covered some men's volleyball action at Long Beach State. So hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 177 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on. You can follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. And you can also follow them on Facebook by typing in the word IE, then Sports, then Radio, by just typing that in the search bar. And then poof, once you click it, like and follow, you're good to go. Also, we have ourselves a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and when you click on the Patreon link at the top, it will start out at $5 a month once you donate. This will get you a shout from all of our shows, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. So with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you for everyone for all of your support and for making all IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Key to the Gate, Marcus Losgreat, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. Alright, with all that said and done, let's get on into that volleyball action. So, it was a very quiet week in the NCAA men's volleyball world. We didn't have the upsets that we had last week. We haven't had too many upsets altogether. The only true big upset we had was BYU beating Lewis. But there were some close calls, as we technically did have one upset last week, and that was back on Tuesday when Damon, who was kicking off its season, took down Princeton in 4 sets at Damon University at Amherst, New York. As Princeton won the first set, it was a close first set, 27-25. Then the next 3 sets just belonged to Damon. They didn't really trail a whole lot. The third set was fairly close early on, but then Damon really started to pour it on later on in the set. They won that third set 25-16. Then the fourth set, they jumped out to a double-digit lead. Princeton got down to as little as 2, but they just could not get the Wildcats' number as Damon took the fourth set 25-22 and the match. It's a big win for Damon. It may not be as big as most people think, but beating Princeton, that's no easy feat just because Princeton does have some studs on their team. Sam Schweisky is an absolute great coach. Damon was led by Zach Schneider, who had 17 kills, and he hit .355. Cameron Milligan had 13 kills. As a team, Damon hit .267. They outdug Princeton 41-34 as they got 10 digs from Sean Califf. The blocks were actually quite even. They were actually dead even, as both teams had 6 solo stuffs, both teams had 2 block assists, and both teams had 1 blocking errors. The big difference was the service aces. Damon had 11 service aces compared to Princeton's 5, as Damon just looked stronger. I don't know what happened. Maybe Princeton was a little fatigued from the previous match, because Princeton actually did play D'Youville the previous night and won that one in straight sets, but they just looked a little out of it. Maybe they looked a little too far ahead in their matchup against UCLA, because this definitely has a little bit of some makings of a trap game. It's one of those interstate rivalry games. Although Damon is considered an NCAA Division II school, don't tell them that, just because they are obviously up for any challenge. And they do have a fairly solid team for the most part. So Princeton was led by Ben Harrington, who had 16 kills. He was the only player in double digits in terms of the kill department for the Tigers. Nate Thompson had 9 kills. As a team, Princeton only hit .204, and they even hit 0 in the third set, where they only had 5 kills and they had 5 errors. And then the fourth set, they also hit 143. So they started off really good, hitting 343, and then they just slowly kind of came back to earth. But again, that's probably courtesy of Damon actually adjusting really good. So for Damon, it's a good victory for them. I really thought that they earned the victory, and it's a good step into the right direction. Although Damon did lose to Penn State, this still is a good win, in my opinion, just because Princeton was on the cusp of making the top 15 from last week, as Princeton did start off in the preseason top 15 at number 15, and then they got moved out because BYU moved on in. So for Princeton, I wouldn't say they're not going to be ranked anytime soon. They did take a set off of UCLA on Friday. The match between UCLA and Princeton got moved to Friday as opposed to Saturday, as it looked like there was other events happening, or probably because of the weather, which had potential leaks and the canceling of flights. So for Princeton, last week was a little bit of a rough week. They went 1-2, but it's a whole different week. This week they are playing Pepperdine. Well, they're playing Pepperdine right now as of this recording, January 16th, 2023 at 6:23 p.m. Pacific time. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be attending this match. They'll be playing Concordia Irvine. And I think that's going to be an interesting match. The Eagles are undefeated, but you never want to underestimate the Tigers. So all in all, this is kind of a big week for Princeton, as it's another road trip. This time they're actually heading down to the West Coast for some matches. But now we got to recap some of the other notable matches from last week. As Hawaii, they looked very good as advertised, as Hawaii beat Ball State both times. The first time, they went up 2-0 on Ball State. Third set, they had a decent chance at sweeping them, but Ball State was just too good. Caleb Jennis was a man on a mission. But the fourth set, Hawaii restored order, and they brought it back, winning 25-17. Hawaii was led by Spiros Chakas, who had 19 kills, and he hit .405. Chaz Galloway added 14 kills. He hit .462. Gary May Voss had 11 kills, 0 hitting errors, and 14 attempts for a hitting total of .786. It was just a great night, as honestly, Hawaii was just on one. They hit over 400, and even though Ball State had Caleb Jennis, who led the way with 18 kills and a .385 hitting percentage, he was the only player in double digits in terms of kills. The other good thing about Ball State was that they outblocked Hawaii 10-5.5, and that's kind of surprising, just because Guilherme Voss and all those other tall players on Hawaii make it so tough to get over the net. So it's kind of a positive for Ball State, but for the Cardinals, they're still a work in progress, just because it can't be Ball State being led by Caleb Jennis every night. As in the chat room, we had Adam Karnick popping in, and Mike Pat says, it is the best volleyball podcast on the internet. Have a great show, Teran. Let me know when FSU wins it all. Well, that might not be for a while, just because NCAA women's volleyball isn't for another, it's January, it's not for another, 7 months. So, sorry, Mike. So that is that for that first matchup against Ball State. The second matchup, this time around, it was Ball State jumping on Hawaii as they took the first set 25-23. It was tight first set early on, but the Cardinals really came to play. They knew they wanted to salvage a split in the series. Hawaii then won the second set in another close fashion set. And then after that second set, Hawaii really took Ball State to town. They were just on one as they out-hit Ball State 439 to 295. In the previous match, Ball State hit over 300 as Hawaii took the third and fourth set by scores of 25-18. Hawaii, once again, was led by Spiros Chakas, who had 22 kills. Dimitrios Muchilas had 13 kills. He hit 455. Chakas hit 581. Muchilas had 6 service aces. Chaz Galloway, 12 kills, 364 hitting percentage. Brett Sheward, 17 digs. And once again, Caleb Jennis was the one that led the way as he had 15 kills. He had 8 hitting errors, and he only hit 189 on 37 attempts. Another good stat, just like the previous match, Ball State outblocked Hawaii, this time 7.5 to 5, as Ball State seems to have a good blocking team based on this match, but can they be consistent on a nightly basis, whether it's in the MIVA or against some of these other tough opponents? So like I said, also on Friday, we had Princeton playing UCLA. UCLA did win that one, 22-25, 25-18, 25-20, and 25-14. After that first set, which Princeton won, UCLA kind of took charge at the Tigers, as they knew they couldn't lose this matchup. Although Princeton did lose that matchup, they won that set, which I think is impressive, and that's kind of going to give them a little bit of an edge, but more on that later. UCLA was led by Alex Knight, who had 13 kills, and he hit 385. He was actually the only one in double digits in terms of kills, as Troy Gooch, who transferred from Purdue Fort Wayne, had 8 digs, as UCLA out-hit Princeton 311 to 162. They also out-blocked Princeton 13.5 to 7, out-dug them 32 to 25. So basically, UCLA, it was showing us all why they were the number 2 team in the nation. Princeton was led by Ben Harrington, who had 13 kills. Nate Thompson, 10 kills as he hit 400. So again, this week is kind of going to be another defining moment week for the Tigers as they play another team on the West Coast. And can they do better against Princeton? And will they be able to beat Concordia Irvine? That we'll see. Also on Friday, we had number 10 UC Santa Barbara taking on Stanford. Stanford swept the Gauchos 25-16, 26-24, 25-18. Theo Snowy, remember the name. He was on one. He has been coming up big. He had 11 kills, only 1 hitting error, 15 attempts for a hitting percentage of .667. Kevin Lamp had 11 kills. He hit .318. Will Rotman didn't even need to have a big night. He had 10 kills, and he also had .368 as a hitting percentage. And Stanford outblocked UCSB 11-3, which that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. UCSB was led by Ryan Wilcox, who had 13 kills, but he only hit 125, probably due to the fact that Stanford outblocked the Gauchos. So it was a big win, and I wasn't really paying attention to that match too much because I was at another match, but more on that later. Saturday was round 2 between UC Santa Barbara and Stanford, but this time the Gauchos came with a little bit more firepower. They won the first set 25-20. Stanford battled back, took that second set 25-22. Third set was super tight as Stanford dropped that set. The Gauchos won at 26-24. Stanford forced a fifth winning the fourth set 26-24. And then the fifth set, mainly Stanford leading the way. The Gauchos were basically in that set for the most part. But unfortunately for Stanford, they just slammed the door on them, winning the fifth set 15-12. Will Rotman had 22 kills, Snowy 10 kills. He also chipped in 12 digs. Kevin Lamp almost had a double-double, 10 kills, 9 digs. Justin Louis, 19 digs. Guesty Bianchi was the one that led the Gauchos in kills, as he had 26 kills, 6 digs. Dane Chalmers, 15 kills. He hit 324. He had 8 digs. Ryan Wilcox, 11 kills, 13 digs. And believe it or not, the Gauchos out-hit the Cardinal 297-271. So the fact that that was kind of a thing was also quite impressive. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough for the Gauchos to pull off the upset. Then we had an earlier matchup before then. We had number 9 Grand Canyon taking on number 14 Ohio State. This was a very underrated match, as GCU needed 5 to win this one, as Ohio State took a very close first set, led for the most part. GCU kind of caught up to them, but Ohio State took the first set 25-23. The Lopes, they woke up. They took the second set 25-18, then won the third set 25-23. But then Ohio State kind of broke out the ruler, the paddle. They took the fourth set 25-18. They wanted fifth set, and I was hoping for a fifth set, and I'm glad we got a fifth set between these two. By the way, this match was played at George Mason University, which is basically up in Fairfax, Virginia. But in the fifth set, after Ohio State won the first point, it was all GCU from there. They basically took charge, won the fifth set 15-10. Despite showing some signs of life, the Buckeyes fell short, as GCU was led by Jackson Hickman, who had 16 kills. Jonah Gilbert added 11 kills. Surprisingly, no Camden Gianni. He has not played in any of the 4 matches, and I will get down to the bottom of that, of why we have not seen Camden Gianni. That is kind of the heartbeat of their team, no pun intended, as Ohio State was led by Jacob Pasteur, 20 kills, hitting percentage of .382, 8 digs. Samuel Clark, 17 kills. He hit .333. He also had 3 aces. And believe it or not, Ohio State out-hit GCU 380-326, but they hit negative 143 in set 5, and they only had 3 kills. And this was the big statistic for Ohio State. They missed 34 serves. You're not going to win a whole lot of matches when you miss 34 serves. I imagine friend of the show, Kevin Birch, was not pleased at that match, at that result, missing 34 serves. Obviously, you want to keep your serves in, but unfortunately for him, that his team just fell short of pulling off a top 10 win. So for the Buckeyes, they're showing more promise. They took Penn State to 4 last week. They took GCU to 5. But unfortunately, they still have yet to get that breakout win. Some other notable results, we had McKendree, the Wildcats, after an 0-2 week in week 1, they beat NJIT last Tuesday 25-21, 25-23, 21-25, and 25-20. And it gets even better. It gets worse for NJIT. Lindenwood swept NJIT at Lindenwood, and also the McKendree win over NJIT was at McKendree, 25-19, 25-21, 25-23. And unfortunately for NJIT, they lost those 2 matches, but they ended the week with a sweep over Sacred Heart. But I was a little concerned for Lindenwood. I was very surprised, or I'm sorry, not Lindenwood, NJIT. Like, NJIT has some good players. They were chosen to finish second in the EIVA. I understand that Lindenwood does have some stud players, and winning on the road is tough, and same with McKendree, but I thought NJIT was a lot better than that. They beat a very solid Purdue Fort Wayne team, and the fact that they were swept against Lindenwood and they lost to McKendree on the road, I don't know. Like, NJIT is good. Either NJIT has something going on, or they're just having a little bit of early pre-rust jitters. But either way, NJIT did end the week with a sweep over Sacred Heart. NJIT gets a big test this week as they play Loyola of Chicago at home this week. More on that later. I have to go over Friday's matchups that I went to at Long Beach State. I went to the Lindenwood USC match, and then I followed that up by going to Long Beach State versus King. Alan Knipe's 20th season in his season opener for Long Beach State did not disappoint. But the first matchup between USC and Lindenwood, I wouldn't say it was not the greatest, but I think USC is proving that they are as good as advertised. I think last week when they lost to UC Santa Barbara, it was on the account that they were playing on the road, and then basically UCSB is a solid team, and USC is still trying to figure things out. But for me, I thought USC played quite well. First set, USC, they came out ready to go. And here's the crazy thing about this matchup between USC and Lindenwood. USC never trailed, and there were no ties between them and the Lions. So the fact that USC really came to play shows how much they mean business. So for the whatchamacallit, the Trojans, I was quite impressed by them. I think that they have a lot of upside to them. First set, they won the first set 25-16, as it was mostly due to tough serving. They served the ball really tough, and Lindenwood just could not run that offense effectively. Second set was kind of the same thing until Lindenwood kind of made a late run to get the lead down to 3. But then Dillon Klein, my guy, the former guest on Set Point, the guest from the Season 4 opener, he came up big. He had the set-clinching kill in set number 2, and he had some amazing highlight plays. He had a block, he also had a big attack kill, and then he also had a kill from the left side, which was the kill that ended the set in set number 2. And then set 3, another strong start for USC, and they never let up as they won the third set 25-16. Dillon Klein had 11 kills. He hit .529. Lucas Frasrand had 8 kills. He had 0 hitting errors, and he had 10 attempts for a hitting percentage of .800. Kevin Coburn, he hit .700, 7 kills on 10 attempts, 0 errors. Simon Gallas, 7 kills. It was just a strong effort from USC. I actually caught up with their head coach, Jeff Nygaard, following his team's win over Lindenwood, as he explained what this means, what the win means, and how his team fared. Teran Rodriguez of Set Point with USC men's volleyball coach Jeff Nygaard. All right, Coach, your team is coming off of a sweep over Lindenwood where you never trailed and the match was never tied. What can you say about your team's performance tonight?
Proud of our guys. They did a really good job of taking it one point at a time. It has a lot of good big breaks in there, and Lindenwood's a strong opponent, so we came in ready, prepared. We took them seriously. We decided to on our side of the net, handle business. So I like seeing our guys be that focused.
Now, Dillon Klein, only a freshman, he led your team with 11 kills and he only had 2 errors. What can you say about Dillon's performance overall through 4 matches?
Dillon is going out there and doing a real nice job for us. What I like the most is in the game times, he's being very consistent as a performer. He's been our most consistent point scorer from serving, and he's putting up some real good numbers attacking. So every opportunity he goes out there, he continues to showcase his talent, his athleticism, and we couldn't be more proud of him as being a Trojan.
Now, your serving was very tough on Lindenwood, as you were just serving like missiles at them. What can you say about your serving through 4 matches?
What I love about what's going on with our serve, we've put some challenges in front of our team as a serving, as consistency and whatnot, and they're responding. They're taking ownership of it. And tonight was one of the best serving runs that we've done, where we were pretty low error from the service line, and we were challenging them. So they're doing a great job of embracing the service philosophy and how we want to go about this. And they're finding their groove. They're finding their competitive serve for us. So a lot of good.
Now, obviously, tomorrow you have King here, but next week you've got 2 big matches against UC Irvine and UC Santa Barbara. What's it going to take to win all those matches and continue your consistency?
Tonight is tonight, and we play tomorrow against King. Nothing else exists.
Got it. Thank you, Coach. You have a great rest of the night, and good luck the rest of the way.
Thank you. Fight on.
USC had 5 service aces and only missed 13 serves, and I agree with him. I thought Lindenwood played pretty good. They were led by Ian Schuler, only a freshman, who had 10 kills. AJ Lewis had 9 kills. Clay Weeder had 8 kills. I thought Lindenwood was fairly solid for the most part. Set 2 is where they kind of showed their true scrappiness. But USC, they have a lot of firepower despite being such a young team and a little bit inexperienced. I thought that USC showed that they can be a threat to the MPSF and to the other teams in the NCAA men's volleyball world. USC did go on to beat King the following day. They actually had quite the adventure, as they thought they were playing in the gold mine, and then the pyramid had some leaks, so the women's basketball match between Long Beach State and Hawaii got moved, so that was the women's basketball match was a 4 p.m. start time. Then USC King played at 6 p.m. Pacific time, and then Long Beach State and Lindenwood followed that matchup at about a little after 8 p.m. Pacific time. So for those East Coasters or Central Coasters, I really feel bad. But I was really impressed by USC. Now, I actually thought they could have beaten UC Santa Barbara. They got off to such a strong start in that first set. Then the second set, the Gauchos obviously battled back. Third set, UCSB went on a little bit of a tear. Fourth set was rather close, but UC Santa Barbara just inched out the win in that fourth set. I just think that was kind of the case of it was the first match of the season, and there was some rust and other, I would say, struggles and growing pains in that match. And obviously they had to go 5 with UC San Diego, but I think USC is going to be consistent. Can they come up big against UC Irvine and UC Santa Barbara this coming week? That's a back-to-back match, and I like his mentality. I like Jeff Nygaard's mentality. Tonight is tonight, tomorrow is what matters, and then nothing else matters. I totally like that. I even said on Twitter that tomorrow's match is what truly matters, not next week. And I didn't even bother asking him about any MPSF questions, just because it's still very early in the season. Teams are starting to feel each other out in terms of their opponents in non-conference play. I mean, UCLA, obviously, they're doing well, but they haven't really been ultimately tested outside of maybe UC Santa Barbara. You also have Pepperdine that is going to get tested this weekend. They haven't really played anyone too big. Then you have Stanford coming off of those 2 big 5-set win over UCSB and then sweeping them. And then they also had a little bit of struggle against St. Francis. And the rest of the MPSF is going to be quite interesting. And there's only one loss as of right now in the MPSF in terms of overall wins and losses. Now, not one loss came from USC, but other than that, the MPSF is looking currently strong. I actually caught up with Dillon Klein following the match and how on his performance and how he as a freshman has grown in these 4 matches, and also how what it feels like to playing with some of these other players like Kevin Cobrin, Lucas Frazrand, and Simon Gallas.
All right, this is Teran Rodriguez of Set Point with former Set Point guest and USC standout Dillon Klein, a.k.a. the Human Highlight Film. All right, Dillon, your team pulled off an impressive win. You didn't trail once, nor was the match tied. What can you say about your team's performance tonight?
We kind of just did what we do, focus on our side of the net, let them make the errors, and kept the ball in the court.
Now, your team serves really tough, as your team basically was just serving missiles at them. What can you say about the team serving through 4 matches?
We've steadily improved. I think that was probably one of our best serving matches. We work on it a lot in practice, so it's really good going out there and serving somewhere close to our best.
Now, through your 4 matches, what have you learned as a player at the collegiate level as a freshman?
Everyone's pretty damn good. There's no one out there that I can point out and be, well, guys a little bit. No, it's everyone. Everyone's really, really good out there.
In addition to you also had contributions from Lucas, Kevin, and Simon, who were right behind you in terms of kills. What can you say about those 3 and how you're basically forming one 4-headed monster?
Those guys are so amazing at volleyball, and it's awesome. Such great people off the court, and I could not be more stoked with my team. And they're really something special.
Now, tomorrow you're facing King, and then next week you've got UC Irvine and UC Santa Barbara. Your coach told me that next week doesn't matter, but what's it going to take down two tough opponents in the Gauchos and the Anteaters?
I think, like my coach said, we're going to focus on the match tomorrow, but all the teams that we play are going to be really good, and I think taking each match as it comes is important. But I also am looking forward to the matches next week, and I hope we can play our game and come out on top.
Dillon, thank you for your time. Congrats on the win, and good luck the rest of the way.
Thank you so much.
One positive that Lindenwood had over USC was that they outblocked them 4-2, but that's kind of where the buck stops. As USC hit 453 as opposed to Lindenwood's 169. Again, it was a tough matchup, and this just goes to show that USC is much better than what they were projected to be, especially when the MPSF preseason coaches poll came out. But I think USC is coming along nicely, but this week is going to be their big test, but I'll talk about that in a little bit later. The next matchup we had was Long Beach State taking on King, and I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but obviously Long Beach State playing at home in Alan Knipe's 20th season in the season opener was kind of expected for Long Beach State to win. The first set, King came out a little bit swinging. I wouldn't say they put Long Beach State on its heels, but I thought that Long Beach State obviously responded really well. The second set, Long Beach never trailed. The third set, King showed some major resiliency. It was 15-13 at the media timeout, and I thought maybe we're going to get King possibly forcing a fourth set or pushing USC to the limit. But after the 15-13 lead at the media timeout, Long Beach outscored King 10-1. It was that ugly after that media timeout. So for Long Beach State, they won that third set 25-14. Long Beach was led by Sotiris Siapanis, the transfer from Ohio State, as he had 9 kills. Spencer Olivier had 8 kills. Shane Holdaway 7 kills. One big thing from Long Beach State was that they really were effective in the middle. Shane Holdaway, he had only 1 hitting error. Simon Torwey, even though he only had 5 kills, he only had 1 hitting error. When it comes to the middle, you got to be ready for Long Beach State's middle blockers, as they just, whenever they go in system and when they have that perfect pass and perfect set and the middle gets set, they're just going to swing at it really swift, and it's basically going to be a kill in the middle, or you're going to have to be super duper ready to dig it up. So for Long Beach State, they were very effective all together. They had 7 service aces to only 14 service errors, which is pretty good. They outblocked King 6.5-3. They outhit them 527-17. Again, that's not because King was bad. I think it was just because Long Beach State has so much depth on their team. Yes, they lost Alex Nikolov to the professionals, but they replaced him with Sotiris Sepanis, and they had other players stepping up. Mason Briggs, he had 6 digs. Also, Clark Godbold, he had 7 kills. So for Long Beach State, they really performed at a high level. As for King, they were led by Jackson Carroll, who had 7 kills. AJ Drucker had 5 kills, and Warren Davis and Kellen Kennedy each had 3 kills. They only had 9 digs as a team, and like I said, they only had 3 blocks and only 1 service ace. So King played 2 matches before the Long Beach State match, and unfortunately those 2 didn't go off well. But one thing I will say about King is that credit to them for accepting the challenge of facing Long Beach State. Like, not many teams are going to want to willingly accept facing Long Beach State, especially on the road. So I actually caught up with King University coach Ryan Booher following the match, and he basically told us why he scheduled this match and basically what it's going to take to have a successful season, just because they play in a fairly tough conference, as it's home to North Greenville and Mount Olive and all those other tough teams. So here's my post-game interview with King University coach Ryan Booher. All right, Ryan, obviously it was a tough loss.
against one of the top teams in the nation, and you've been on the road for a majority of the first 4 games. What can you say about this 4-game road trip, and how much preparation are you getting out of these 4 games as you continue the season?
I mean, I set it up so we'd play like top teams to start the season. I mean, we're getting ready to play our 4th-ranked team tomorrow in 4 days. And, I just want our team to see that, see what level we got to get to so we can go back and work on it and get some great experience. I mean, Long Beach is phenomenal. They're probably going to be in the top, 4 or 5 of the country all year long. They're really good. And it's just great for us to get to play against teams like that and see sort of where we need to be. And I thought we competed well, especially for moments. We've got to clean some things up. But, I mean, I've got a young team and experience and somewhat, and I think this is a good way to do it.
And what were some positives that you could take away from this match going into tomorrow against USC?
I mean, honestly, I thought Justin Sawyer played a great match, our libero. Thought he was all over the place, making touches. Maybe he didn't get all the digs, but he made a lot of great touches and serve received well. Jackson Carroll came to play well. I think it was just eye-opening. I mean, they're bigger than any team we're probably going to see outside of maybe USC and Lewis and Loyola. And it's just good to see that we don't give up. We don't quit. I mean, we're not going to see that speed in our conference or that height. So I think it's a good thing to see that, and then we can keep growing from it.
Now, Justin is listed as an outside hitter / opposite, but he plays libero. Is that a little experiment going on early in the season, or what's that about?
Well, last year he was an outside when he came in, and then we graduated both our liberos, so we needed to make some changes, and we brought in a couple, and we're still sort of playing the lineup, but he's done a great job. He practiced in it last year just to make the change, and so we've done that, and honestly, I mean, he showed tonight. He came out and played, and he competed really well.
Now, USC is coming, or you play USC tomorrow. They kind of had the same tough serving that Long Beach State had. What's it going to take to get past USC and get your first win of the season?
I mean, it's going to take a lot. We're going to have to play. I mean, it's like both these teams, and any team we play in this first 4 or 5 is you got to play almost perfect ball and serve, receive. You just got to get your arms out, not really get caught overthinking and just react. And we sometimes we got caught in what I call quicksand where we weren't ready to move. But, for the most part, I thought we did a really good job of getting the ball up and giving Jack a chance.
And you play in the Conference of Carolinas, right?
Yes.
Obviously, that's still a new conference. What's it going to take to win that conference and punch your ticket to the NCAA tournament? Or are you not looking that far ahead?
I mean, I think, that's our ultimate goal for the year is to win Conference Carolinas. And there's some good teams. North Greenville brings back a bunch of good players. Belmont Abbey's got some solid returners as well. And Mount Olive's always tough. So I think it's going to be, you got to run the gauntlet. There's always you play better. But I think for us, we've got to stay healthy, and just keep driving every day to get a little better and to keep getting to the level where we need to be. But I think these guys have the work ethic, and I think we'll do that. And this is just good experience and a great test for us to start the season.
So that was my post-game interview with King University men's volleyball coach Ryan Booher. So yeah, Conference Carolinas. Yeah, if I had to project who was going to be the first place team from that conference, I'd probably say North Greenville, maybe Mount Olive. He also mentioned Belmont Abbey in that conference. So again, I never really got to properly preview that conference before the men's volleyball season started, as their preseason coaches polls weren't released the same time as the Big West or the MPSF or the EIVA or the MIVA. But for King, you have to give it up for them. They have played some tough matches. And again, playing Long Beach State and USC in Southern California is not easy. It's a whole different time zone, and you're away from a majority of your fans. I mean, they had some good fan turnout as well. I mean, their fans from behind me were actually quite spirited, and they have played some tough opponents. They've played 4 of their 5 losses have come against ranked opponents, as they lost to Lewis last Wednesday, they lost to Loyola of Chicago last Thursday, and then they played Long Beach State last Friday, and then they played USC last Saturday. So, and keep in mind, all those games are on the road. Well, for the USC one, it was neutral site, but it was still in Southern California. King has yet to play a home game. That is very interesting, if you ask me. And their other loss was to Purdue of Fort Wayne, but that is a solid Purdue of Fort Wayne team right there. But for King, this is going to really help them going into Conference of Carolinas play, as they also have Charleston, Limestone, Quincy on the docket this week. Then they've also got other teams. They play Lincoln Memorial, and like Ryan said, they play North Greenville in their conference. And Lincoln Memorial is a part of their conference. Then they also have a 2-game road trip against McKendree and Lindenwood. They also play NJIT in a non-conference game. They also play St. Francis in a non-conference game. North Greenville again. So overall, these big-time matches for them they're basically going to help them out going forward into conference play, just because when it comes to the Conference of Carolinas, they need to be at their best. And he said it best as well. They got to stay healthy. Otherwise, they're going to be at the mercy of the likes of North Greenville, Lincoln Memorial, and Mount Olive, and Belmont Abbey as well. So, the Conference of Carolinas is still trying to figure things out. They're still trying to figure out who's going to be the juggernaut, who's going to be the one that becomes I wouldn't say the Cinderella or the little engine that pulls off a win in the NCAA tournament. So overall for King, I think they're going to be solid, and I like that how they've basically been up to the challenge. They've been put up to the challenge as they faced 4 of those opponents. They faced all four of those opponents that I just mentioned in straight nights. They played Lewis in Romeoville, then they played Loyola in Chicago, so that's 2 nights in Illinois. Then they had to travel from there to Long Beach in the span of less than 24 hours to play Long Beach State. And then the following night, where they didn't even know where they were going to play or if the matches were going to be played at all, they had to play USC in a smaller gymnasium than the Pyramid. So you have to keep that into consideration. And all that pressure is going to eventually turn them into a diamond, and they're going to shine bright when it truly matters the most. So for King, I think they're going to be quite solid going into Conference of Carolinas play. And they should be solid for this upcoming week. I know this time they're going to have a 3-game homestand as opposed to a 3-game road trip. 3 or 4 game road trip, as they will get to play 3 matches in a row. They have to play 3 matches in a row, but they will be playing they'll be playing Quincy and Limestone. They should be able to beat both those opponents. Charleston should be a little bit of a challenge, but when it comes to collegiate sports, anything can happen. It's kind of like the NFL, any given Sunday, so we'll see what happens with King going forward. And then Lindenwood, the same thing kind of applies to them. They've faced some tough opponents. They did beat NJIT, which is their only win of the season, but I think they're still a solid team. They're young, but I think they're very solid and very promising. So don't underestimate Lindenwood. I mean, yes, the MIVA, they kind of get the shaft when it comes to teams like Ball State, Ohio State, Loyola of Chicago, Lewis, McKendree, all those other teams. But I think Lindenwood is sneaky good in that conference. Are they good to win the conference altogether? That still remains to be seen. But honestly, I think that Lindenwood might have some promise going forward in the future. So that is that for the recap of week number 2. So we have to get into the top 15 for this week. So spoiler alert, there were no one dropped out from last week, but there was still some movement. So 15 through 11 consisted of Lewis at 15, Ohio State at 14, BYU at 13, UC Santa Barbara at 12, and Loyola at 11. 10 through 6 consisted of USC at 10, Grand Canyon at 9, Stanford at 8, UC Irvine at 7, and Ball State at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Pepperdine at 5, Penn State at 4, Long Beach State at 3, UCLA at 2, and your still number 1 team in the AVCA/NVA men's volleyball coaches poll is Hawaii. So again, there weren't too many surprises this past week. No true upsets outside of maybe Damon upsetting Princeton. Princeton, surprisingly, is still receiving votes. There are only 2 teams receiving votes, Princeton and Lincoln Memorial. But the one team that kind of really surprised me in a not-so-good way was NJIT. Again, I thought NJIT has a solid team. They really do have a solid team on paper. They could be banged up early on. They're still maybe trying to figure things out. Maybe playing on the road is kind of I wouldn't say a big challenge, but a little bit of an early challenge for them. But you kind of have to wonder what's going on with NJIT early on. Like I said, they have a big-time matchup this week, but I'll get into that a little bit later. But instead, we will get into our first commercial break when we come back. Our first and only commercial break, mind you. But when we come back, I'll be previewing Week 3 of the NCAA men's volleyball season. And I'll also be going over some of the transfers as well as some coaching changes or coaching news. So keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always willing to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Best check out all of our amazing shows, such as The Show That Never Sleeps with Harrison Glazer and Pierre Moss every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Also, we have Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. Also, we have Adam Karnick that goes live every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Adam goes live primarily 1 hour before this show goes live, so make sure you tune in prior to Set Point. But let's get on into segment number 2. We don't have too much to go over, as this might actually be one of the more shorter shows that I've had in a while. So we got to preview NCAA Men's Volleyball Week number 3, as there are some good marquee matchups, and we have the First Point Collegiate Challenge, as that is the biggest event of this week. But first, the other matchups to watch for in Week 3. Wednesday, you have number 10 USC taking on number 7 UC Irvine. The Trojans are on a 4-game winning streak, but the Anteaters have yet to lose a match this season. They've only lost 1 set overall, as this is going to be technically their biggest challenge of the season at this point, as it's basically going to be the young little Trojans taking on the heralded and experienced Anteaters. It's going to be at the Bren Event Center, 5 p.m. Pacific start time. The Anteaters are proving to be one of the more top teams and talented teams in all of the NCAA men's volleyball world. I really think that the Anteaters are going to be quite something special come Big West Conference play. But first, they have to get past this little matchup against USC. The Trojans, I think they're starting to come together after that first loss of the season to UC Santa Barbara. And speaking of UC Santa Barbara, that's a perfect segue to go into the next matchup to watch for in Week 3. Number 12 UC Santa Barbara at number 10 USC on Thursday. So it's the second of a back-to-back for the Trojans. USC gets their first home opener. They get to play in the Galen Center. They don't have to deal with conflictions with the men's or women's basketball team. For the Trojans, this is going to be quite interesting because I think USC is playing much better. I'm not trying to say UC Santa Barbara isn't playing better or they're not playing good at all. I think UC Santa Barbara will be ready, but I think if USC serves like they did against Lindenwood and King, I think they will be tough to stop, especially since they're going to be playing at their place. The previous match was played at UC Santa Barbara, but now USC gets to play the Gauchos in the Galen Center. So I think that's a little bit of a big plus for the Trojans. I think that USC can hold their own against the Gauchos, and I think that could say a lot for the up-and-coming coaches poll for next week, just because USC, they're currently ranked ahead of the Gauchos, even though the Gauchos beat them. But you also got to remember, UC Santa Barbara lost to Lincoln Memorial. They also lost to UCLA. And then they haven't really won ever since that season opener against USC. So the Gauchos are a little bit overdue for a win, as they've lost 4 in a row, which is interesting just because USC has won 4 in a row, and USC will be coming off of a match the previous day against UC Irvine. So it's kind of a Big West two-step. So for USC, this is going to be quite fun. These past 2 games are going to be quite fun. And for students, first 1,000 fans first 1,000 fans get a free t-shirt, and it's also National Popcorn Day on Thursday, so I've heard. I'm not trying to promote USC. I'm just saying that that's something you have to come out and support your team out when it comes to. It's their first home opener of the season, so for USC, it's kind of a big matchup right there. They have played all their matches in California, but now they get to play in their own home gym. Then we have Friday. Number 11, Loyola of Chicago takes on NJIT. This is going to be an interesting matchup. So NJIT, they have a little bit of ground to make up after they lost to McKendree and Lindenwood. They're actually 1-2 against teams in the MIVA, as Loyola of Chicago, they're undefeated. They're 3-0, as last week they beat Missouri M&T, which played its first National Collegiate Volleyball match which was quite nice. And then also Loyola defeated UC San Diego, and they also, I'm blanking on who else they beat last week, but for Loyola, I think they should be, they're good as advertised, but for NJIT, this is kind of a more prove it to us that you deserve to win. And they beat King. How could I forget that? They beat King, and they also beat UC Riverside on Thursday and on Friday. And like I said, they beat Missouri S&T, not M&T, S&T. So those three matchups. But against those opponents, they're not really the best opponents. I'm not trying to say they're bad, but they have about 1 or 2 wins combined in terms of their record. Again, not trying to say anything, but now I think NJIT, despite coming off a 1-2 record from last week, it should be a little bit of a challenge taking on those talented stud players. I really think NJIT can really make noise in the EIVA. I don't think that they should be underestimated. Yes, they lost those 2 matchups, but I think for NJIT, you don't want to underestimate them because they have some good returns. They've got Julian Meisner, Alessandro Negri, Jens Feldthus, Martin De Chavaria, Carson Williams, and they've also got a good 6'2 offense in Griffin Feisler and Roque Nito. So their only key loss was their libero, and I think that's kind of what their main point is. They still need to figure out who their libero is going to be because they actually don't have any designated liberos. So they're going to have to basically meld one from the outside hitter position or the defensive specialist position or anything of that sort. So for Loyola, obviously Parker Van Buren, the MIVA newcomer of the year, is back on the team. And they've also got Cole Schlothauer, Nick Bartinsky, as well as Matt Oakley and Dan Mangun. So for Loyola of Chicago, I really think that this is kind of their first biggest test. They're not going to honestly be challenged until February 3rd when they play at Long Beach State, and I'm going to be there. So for Loyola of Chicago, I don't think they're going to fully move up unless someone falls. They're currently at number 12 in the coaches poll, but I don't think they'll be moving up anytime soon unless we see certain teams losing to other teams, or we just see Loyola of Chicago just pulling off that big upset against Long Beach State. I think Loyola of Chicago is good, but this NJIT matchup is kind of the prove to us that you are really good matchup. Also on Friday, we have number 12 UC Santa Barbara taking on number 2 UCLA. This one, however, is going to be at the Pauley Pavilion, as this is going to be round 2 between the Gauchos and the Bruins. Obviously, UCLA won the first matchup at UC Santa Barbara. UCLA just has that super talented team, returning of many All-Americans, All-Conference players. UCLA is going to be something special to watch for this season. They did lose that first set to Princeton, but they are not going to cry over that spilt milk. They were able to win that matchup against Princeton. I think they can handle UC Santa Barbara, especially since they'll be coming off of a match against USC. So that is the big thing right there. And I really think that Santa Barbara does have potential, but they're just going to have to pick up the pieces, and they're basically going to have to establish who their potential star players are going to be. Obviously, Ryan Wilcox is one, but Gesti Bianchi, I think that's how his name is pronounced, he is a stud player. He was a stud back in high school, and I think he had some big moments at Orange Coast College. So for Bianchi, I think he can come up big. Like I said, Ryan Wilcox is good. Dane Chalmers I know he has that potential. At first, he played libero for the Gauchos, but then he got to play his primary position in outside hitter. I think they have established their setter position, as Jack Walmer, who transferred from Hawaii, is on that Santa Barbara team. Interesting thing about this UC Santa Barbara Gauchos is that most of that team does consist of Miracosta players and some Loyola players, and those two high schools right there are in the Los Angeles area. So it's kind of little of UC Santa Barbara. UC Santa Barbara is basically Loyola and Miracosta 2.0. That's just my little take right there. Another player to keep an eye out for on UC Santa Barbara is Brandon Hicks. He actually did some great things in the middle, as the middle blocker position from a few seasons ago. I think he could reestablish himself as the middle blocker, but I think their main concern would be who else is going to give Ryan Wilcox the support. Obviously, Dane Chalmers can, but will Guest Bianchi have himself the big-time game that he had on Saturday against Stanford? That still remains to be seen. Like I said, UCLA has Ethan Champlin, Miles Partain, Merrick McHenry, Ito David, Guy Guinness, and Alex Knight. It looks like Alex Knight is also going to be back in the rotation. I didn't get to see a whole lot of him the previous year, but I think that John Speraw is definitely going to have him in the rotation and basically going to give him his minutes. So that's that little matchup right there. Then we have the big event for this weekend. The First Point Challenge at the Austin Convention Center in Austin, Texas. We'll start off at, this is going to be a 4 p.m. Pacific time start, I want to say. Either way, First Point Challenge is going to be Friday and Saturday, or the First Point Collegiate Challenge, as the first matchup is at 4 p.m. I imagine it's 4 p.m. Texas time, as that's probably going to be a 2 p.m. Pacific time start. But the first matchup is number 15 Lewis taking on number 8 Stanford. Lewis has been, I wouldn't say they haven't been the best, but they're still trying to get used to life without Tyler Mitchum. Well, Stanford, they've had quite the eventful 4 matches, except for the sweep against UC Santa Barbara, as they had to go 5 with St. Francis and UC Santa Barbara, and then they also had to go 4 with St. Francis. So this is going to be an interesting match for Stanford, because now they're going to be forced out of their, I wouldn't say comfort zone, but they're not going to be playing in Stanford. So now they're going to have to play at the Austin Convention Center, and who knows, maybe we will see the Cardinal. I mean, the Cardinal on paper should win this matchup, but you just can't underestimate Lewis. I think Lewis does have potential this season. I think it's just all a matter of what are they going to do without Tyler Mitchum, as they have some good players this season. They have Kevin Calling, their star setter. John Davis is probably going to be the lead outside hitter. Cole Brillhart, Jason Gibbs, and then you also have Max Roquet and Michael Sack. Again, Tyler Mitchum is only the first of many questions that Lewis has to answer from last season, as they basically just have to have one. They can't just have one good player. They have to have a full team effort. And then Stanford, definitely keep an eye on Theo Snowy. He has taken the entire Stanford team and the entire NCAA men's volleyball scene by storm. I think that is a big-time weapon for Stanford, especially since they don't have to lean on Will Rotman 9 times out of 10. They also have Kevin Lamp, who's been performing well. Ethan Hill, you can't count out. Nathan Gates is also a good player to watch for. So for Stanford, this is going to be a big week for them, because now this is kind of where their true big test is. Then later in the First Point Collegiate Challenge is my match of the week. Number 4 Penn State taking on number 5 Pepperdine. That's going to be a 7 p.m. Central Start Time matchup right there. This is a big time matchup for the Waves and the Nittany Lions. Pepperdine hasn't really been fully challenged, as this is going to be the first biggest test for the Waves this season. Ohio State's been kind of challenged. They lost the set to Central State, and they lost the set to Ohio State. But other than that, they are undefeated on the season. But this is going to be which team is for real and which team is basically number 5 at best. As we welcome Cale Henderson in the chat room, he says, "Good evening, Teran. Good evening to you, sir. Hope you are doing well." As back to Penn State, Pepperdine. Pepperdine, I can see them giving Penn State a challenge, but Penn State returns so much talent, and it just can't be the Jalen Jasper show. Obviously, Jalen Jasper can carry his load, but other players need to step up. As Bryce Dvorak, he's going to need to be key for the Waves. Jacob Steele, I can see him stepping up. And Trey Cole, I think, can definitely do some big things at the libero position. And then Penn State, like I said, Penn State is going to be quite the challenge just because they return so much talent. Their only big question mark is their libero, but they should probably have that figured out after Will Bantle graduated. And this is just a very stacked team, and I would not be surprised if Penn State won this one, but I just don't think their Pepperdine's supposed to be underestimated. I mean, Brett Wildman is phenomenal for Penn State. Toby Ezeonu is a beast in the middle. Cal Fisher, also a beast on the right side. Cole Bogner, a great setter. Sam Marsh, also a good middle blocker, which helps out Toby Ezeonu. And Michael Valenzi, also a good pin hitter for Penn State as well. But overall, I think Penn State should be able to win this one, but I want a barn burner. I want a 5-setter and a thriller to the end. I really think that Penn State and Pepperdine will not disappoint, just because I think that those two have a lot of talent on their respective teams, and they're going to do some big things when it comes to their seasons. Like, I could see Pepperdine challenging UCLA when it comes to the MPSF, and then for Penn State, they left a lot of meat on the bone when it came to the EIVA from last season. And obviously, losing in the semifinals of the conference tournament did not help matters. And I really think that Penn State has that potential this year. And I really think that it's going to be quite something for the Nittany Lions. And I can't wait to see what they could do in conference play. And also, they play Hawaii later on in the season, so that's going to be something else to watch for. One more player to watch for on Penn State is John Kerr. He came up big in the previous weekend against Ohio State, so that's just another offensive option for Penn State. They definitely have that potential. If they don't win the EIVA, I'll be flabbergasted to see if they can make the NCAA tournament, just because the tournament field is getting expanded. So there's that right there. Then we have Saturday's matchups. The only noteworthy Saturday matchups that are to my knowledge is the First Point Challenge day number 2. You have number 15 Lewis taking on number 5 Pepperdine. Then you have number 4 Penn State taking on number 8 Stanford. It's the battle of the top returning players on these top teams. For Stanford, again, this is going to be their biggest matchup right here. Santa Barbara was obviously a good test for them. St. Francis kind of made them shake off the rust. But Penn State is going to be a whole nother beast to tame for Stanford. Do I think Stanford can win? Of course. But is it going to be easy? Obviously not, because Penn State is just that good. They have some dogs on that team, or in this case, some lions on that team that are hungry. And that whole Penn State team is hungry, and they are just well coached. Mark Pavlik does an outstanding job. So does John Costi of Stanford. Remember, this is a Stanford team, and this is a testament to Stanford's players, because you also got to remember that during the COVID year, or when COVID happened, Stanford men's volleyball was possibly going to be dropped from Stanford University, but everyone was able to save Stanford men's volleyball as fortunately for Stanford, the men's volleyball players such as Will Rotman, Kevin Lamp, and Luke Turner, and a few others, they basically helped keep Stanford men's volleyball alive. As Stanford men's volleyball, this is probably Stanford's best chance to win an NCAA men's volleyball championship this year. It's not going to be easy just because there's so much talent all across the board, not just from their conference with UCLA and Pepperdine in their way, but all across the nation, such as Hawaii. You have Penn State, Long Beach State, you have UC Irvine, which is going to be up there. Grand Canyon is also good, the Lopes. USC could pose a threat to them, but I just think Stanford has so much returning talent, and they did not lose anyone too significant. And Kale says, this is NCAA men's volleyball I'm talking about. Women's volleyball doesn't start for another 7 months, but soon. So it's all good, Kale. So that's that for all my noteworthy NCAA men's volleyball matches to watch for. But now that Kale does bring up Nebraska and NCAA women's volleyball, that's a perfect segue to go into the last topic of the night, and that is the NCAA women's volleyball notable transfers and notable coaching news. So I was going to get the coaching news out of the way, as there wasn't anything too big in terms of hires, but former Set Point guest Steve Astor did land a coaching gig. It's not a head coaching gig, but he is going from Pepperdine to Big 12 country to be with Kansas State. You got to look at Steve Astor's coaching timeline a little bit closer to see how big this is, just because from 2009 all the way to 2011, he started off as an assistant boys volleyball coach at Newport Harbor. Then the legendary Dan Glenn stepped away, or he stepped down as head coach. Then Steve Astor took the reins as the Newport Harbor boys volleyball coach from 2012 and 2013. Then he stepped down to be the head coach at Corona Del Mar High School from 2013, the fall of 2013, all the way to the end of the fall of 2018. And keep in mind that 2018 team had Kendall Kipp on it, and she was an All-American, and she was just a stud at Stanford, and she is a stud, and she has one more year of eligibility. So you gotta, Kendall Kipp's development in terms of her talent is courtesy of Steve Astor being such a phenomenal coach, and he really helped turn the Sea Queens around, as well as developing Kendall Kipp, as well as a few other players like Jessie Harris, who played at Princeton, and a few other players as well. I think Nikki Sensky, who I think she's played at Boston College, or she committed to Boston College. I'm not sure if she's still there, but either way, it's just a few other players that are playing on the collegiate volleyball level on the NCAA women's volleyball side. Then after his coaching gig at Corona Del Mar, he was the Washington volleyball volunteer assistant coach from the 2019 season. And then after that season, COVID kind of happened, and we didn't know what his status was going to be. But then during the COVID year, Steve Astor then was the Pepperdine assistant volleyball coach for Scott Wong from 2020, or the spring of 2021, all the way to the winter of 2022, or the end of this past NCAA women's volleyball season. So it's been a long time coming. So he went from assistant high school coach to high school coach, or assistant high school boys volleyball coach to assistant boys coach, assistant boys volleyball coach to boys volleyball coach to girls volleyball coach in an extended period, to NCAA women's volleyball volunteer assistant coach to full-on assistant coach to associate head coach. So it's kind of a big full circle moment for Steve Astor. And for Astor, I'm just going to say this, and this is going to be my prediction right here. I think he lands a head coaching gig. Now, I will guarantee that, obviously, and if he doesn't, then I will eat my crow. But I am guaranteeing this. Steve Astor will land a head coaching gig for whether it's an NCAA men's or women's volleyball team. He obviously wants to coach on the women's side just because he doesn't have any affiliation. I guess I should also mention that he was a volunteer assistant coach for UC Irvine back in 2019. Yeah, 2019. I saw Long Beach State play UC Irvine, and I was flabbergasted to see him on the bench. And that was kind of pretty much after his coaching stint at Corona Del Mar High School, or CDM. So, anyway, yeah, it's been a long time coming for Steve Astor. Now he's an associate head coach, and the fact that he has grown so much as a coach is kind of amazing. And the fact that he went from assistant coach in terms on the high school level to head coach on the high school level to volunteer assistant to full-on assistant to associate head coach is quite amazing. And I really, really hope he becomes a head NCAA men's or NCAA women's volleyball coach. I really hope that happens to him. And like I said, he was a former guest on Set Point, so I'm excited to see what he can do for Kansas State. He did get the associate coaching job at Kansas State, as he will be joining Jason Mansfield and the other assistant coaches on that coaching staff. So I'm excited to see what Steve Astor has in store for K-State, as K-State kind of went through a big overhaul in terms of their coaches. Their longtime head coach stepped down, and Jason Mansfield stepped in, as he comes from, I think he comes from Oklahoma. So it's interesting if you ask me. So that's that for all of the notable coaching news. There weren't really there wasn't too many coaching news that was like ultimately notable, but for me, I think that's kind of big right there, just because Steve Astor was our former guest, and he's a friend of the show, and I definitely got to make note of that. So on to the NCAA women's volleyball notable transfers, and there were only two that I saw that caught my eye. So first one, this player actually is actually entered the transfer portal and is looking for a new home. And that happens to be Reagan Cooper, outside hitter. She is a graduate student, and she comes from Texas Tech, so she'll be in the transfer portal. She was second on the team in kills last year, and she led all outside hitters on Texas Tech in hitting percentage, which I think is big right there. So I really think that Reagan Cooper could do big things for whichever team she goes to, and she'll definitely be an impact player. So definitely keep an eye on her, and Texas Tech's loss is someone else's gain. But now that we're still in Big 12 country, this is a big transfer right here. Melanie Parra transfers from Texas to TCU, which I think is big time right there. So she still will remain in Big 12 country, but she'll also still remain in Texas, but she will be donning purple, as she'll be with the Horned Frogs. This is big right there, just because she was only a serving specialist for Texas in their national championship run. I think she could definitely start for the Horned Frogs, as she also wants to possibly boost her chances of possibly making the national Mexican volleyball team, or Team Mexico's national women's volleyball team. And I think she could do so. I think she has that potential. And if she's in that starting rotation for TCU, it's going to be quite something special. And remember, they just got the setter from Missouri. So that's big news right there. Melanie Parra should be an extra added gear, not just in serve receive, but in the offense for TCU as well. And remember, this TCU team made it past the first round. They beat a talented Washington team in 4 sets in the round of 64. They did eventually fall to the past reigning champion, Wisconsin. But for TCU, they got a good one in Melanie Parra. She has a wicked floating jump serve, and it's quite something special. You have to see it to believe it. She doesn't have the numbers in terms of that jump serve, but that serve could really cause fits for opposing teams if they're not prepared for it. So Melanie Parra is going to do really good wonders for TCU. So that is going to do it for all the notable transfers right there. If you have any notable transfers or coaching news that you want me to be aware of, definitely let me know. You can follow me on Twitter at set_point.ie. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. It is that time, as it's time for me to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I really do appreciate you. Big shout out to the chat room, Adam Karnick, Mike Pat, and Cale Henderson. Also shout out to Patty Bags for tuning in and listening as well. I appreciate you. You listening to my shows does not go unnoticed. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. I will see you volleyball fans on Wednesday at Concordia University, Irvine, as I will be checking out the Eagles and the Tigers taking on one another. We will see if Concordia can stay undefeated or if Princeton will be able to pull off that big win. But until then, have a great rest of the night. To all my listeners out there, I will see you on Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. But until then, have a great rest of the night. Enjoy the volleyball action that the world has to offer. And if you're in the Austin, Texas area, definitely check out the First Point Collegiate Challenge. You won't be disappointed, I promise you. You're going to see some high-level talent on 2 different days, and I can assure you, you're going to have a great time, especially if you're a volleyball fan. Until then, have a great rest of the night, and I'll see you on the other side.